J.K. Dobbins has seen a significant rise in his average draft position over the last month. But should you be buying or selling him right now? We'll discuss that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can also read her at Behind the Steel Curtain and at Pro Football Focus. On today's show, it's a Market Monday edition of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are taking a look at three players who have seen a significant rise or decrease in their dynasty value. And let's start with J.K. Dobbins, who is up about 24 spots over the last month or so. J.K. Dobbins, Kate, are you buying or selling?
I'm selling so hard, it's not even funny. And Marcus, I'm going to be honest. I'm looking at J.K. Dobbins and saying that he is the ultimate case of what could have been, right? As a rookie, came out, looked sharp, 805 rushing yards on just 134 carries, just looked like he was off to an absolutely incredible start in his young career. But injuries have, just absolutely defined everything that J.K. Dobbins has done to this point. 2021, August, ends up having a terrible ACL injury. It was even far more complicated than just a simple ACL surgery, right? It was an ACL, an MCL, an LCL. We saw J.K. Dobbins just literally destroy this knee. He ended up, just kind of taking the year, came back in 2022, ended up spending a lot of his season still dealing with the ramifications of that injury. Then week 1, 2023, tears his Achilles. This man has not even had 250 carries yet as a pro. And we're seeing him head into what is technically the 5th year of his career. I mean, at what point are we going to say, this was a good run? This was a very unfortunate series of events, but is there a realistic outcome where you can see J.K. Dobbins regaining long-term value? I have to say I can't.
No, I don't think he's going to have long-term value, but could he
But
have
this dynasty?
Right, but it's the running back position, which is really just a year-to-year position anyways, right? I don't stress about the dynasty value of a running back too much. Kate, he's being drafted as RB47. So even with the massive increase in value, he is still incredibly affordable. And one of the reasons why I am buying is because, number one, I still believe in the talent. Whenever he's played, he's been an awesome player. Number two, I believe in the situation. You look at the Chargers backfield, it's Gus Edwards, who he played with in Baltimore. And then that's about it. I mean, he's going back to a Greg Roman offense. It's a Jim Harbaugh offense that wants to run the crap out of the football, right? So if I can get a really talented running back who's 25 years old and I can draft him outside of the top 155 players, I think I am willing to take a chance. Now, we've seen some workout videos, which is this is prime workout video season on Twitter, by the way.
Guys in shorts, baby.
Everybody looks awesome. We're still about 3 months away from the NFL season beginning. I'm curious to see what J.K. Dobbins looks like in 3 months, 4 months. I think I am willing to pay this price on J.K. Dobbins for the 5% hope that he stays healthy and he works out, because the situation is so optimal for a player like him.
I mean, I understand. Going into this season, obviously, there's been a huge downturn in value for Justin Herbert. And a large part of that is because we know Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh want to run the football. Like that is what they have built this offense to do at this point. And I get it. It should theoretically play in J.K. Dobbins' favor. But Marcus, looking at J.K. Dobbins and, how much excitement there is, how much talent there is, would you guess how many games J.K. Dobbins has with 15 or more fantasy points in his
Oh,
career?
I mean, first of all, how many games has he played? He's played, was it 24 career games?
24 career games.
Uh, 7?
5 games of 15 or more fantasy points in full PPR formats.
I know he's not going to catch the ball. I get it, but man, Kate, there's a chance that he could be hyper efficient in this offense and just get a bunch of touches.
I understand the hope and excitement, but I mean, Marcus, even from like a rushing attempt standpoint, he's had 4 games in his career with 15 or more rush attempts. Like he's never been utilized as a workhorse, and I don't think his injury history lends itself to Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh being like, yeah, let's give this guy 15 plus touches a game. Seems like his body can handle it. He's only had 15 plus carries, like I said, in 4 career games out of 24 games played. I'm just saying that, like, what would make us think that now is the time after this very traumatic leg injury, after the Achilles? Why would this be the time that we say, all right, let's go all in and make J.K. Dobbins a workhorse? I'm going to be honest. If I have to make a bet, it's going to be on Gus Edwards, who to this point in his career has been just more reliable as a running back in terms of availability.
The great news, Kate, is you can get both of these running backs insanely cheap, right? Gus Edwards being drafted at RB 43, 140th overall. J.K. Dobbins 157. If you just want to draft the Chargers backfield, late in the double digit rounds or wherever that's at, I guess it would be like the 9th, 10th round. Why not? To me, this is a team that we know is going to produce at the running back position. We've seen these 2 running backs produce in Greg Roman's offense before. Now they have a really good quarterback, not like they did in Baltimore, but a really good quarterback that can stretch the field. I'm buying both of these running backs. I want to mention some of the other names that are being drafted ahead of J.K. Dobbins right now that I just don't get, including Jerome Ford at RB 42. I love Ray Davis, but at RB 41, I would rather just have J.K. Dobbins. They're basically the same age.
That's what's crazy.
Yeah, there's just so many of these running backs in that range where if Dobbins can stay healthy, he's just more talented than those guys.
He's definitely more talented, but Marcus, even the contract that the Chargers gave him,
I
1
know.
year, $1.6 million, that's basically the vet minimum. And then you look at Gus Edwards, they at least put up some more money on the front end, 2 years, $6.5 million. I do think that if both of these backs are healthy, Gus Edwards is the guy that's going to see more touches on a
Probably.
game-to-game basis. I'm not saying he's more talented than J.K. Dobbins when they are both fully healthy, but again, looking at the circumstances, J.K. Dobbins is going to have to be incredibly efficient, which these injuries do not lend themselves to long-term efficiency. I'm just saying, if I can get both of these guys at around the same price tag, rolling with Edwards.
Just letting you know that Gus Edwards is also 29 years old and has a lot of wear and tear on that body. So it's not like he is this superstar running back ahead of
I
J.K.
don't think
Dobbins.
he's a superstar, but we're saying, like, if we want to
Just
pick
saying.
a guy in the offense, and I mean, as far as running backs go, Gus Edwards, he has not been the focal point of his respective offense. He's got just under 700 career rush attempts. Like, he's no Derrick Henry. Let's just say that
That's
for
fine.
what it is.
All right, let's talk
Maybe
about
the
another.
answer is neither, but I think it's from a volume
It
standpoint.
might
in
be.
this offense, it's one of them.
I'm buying both just because I want parts of this Chargers backfield. So I'm willing to buy both. Let's talk about a running back, Kate, who has seen a big decrease in their dynasty value over the last 2 months. We will get to Tyjae Spears next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and so much more. And you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 that you can use to bet on everything from Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. By the way, my favorite Finals MVP bet right now is Jaylen Brown at plus 180 on FanDuel. Jason Tatum is currently the favorite, and I don't get that at all because he's kind of stunk the first two games. If the Celtics win this series, Jaylen Brown at plus 185 is a fantastic value. I still kind of like the Mavs at plus 660 to win the NBA Finals now that we're going back to Dallas. So we'll see. But go visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and add a big win to your summer bucket list on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. So are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that unnecessary screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Kate, let's talk about Tennessee Titans running back Tyjae Spears. And it's not hard to understand why we've seen a decrease in his ADP. Obviously, the Titans have signed Tony Pollard. He is expected to be the quote-unquote starter. But are you buying or selling at Tyjae Spears now that he has a new ADP?
I'm kind of buying, and I'm going to be honest, Marcus, I'm a little surprised because I was definitely out on Tyjae Spears amidst the contract. Tony Pollard came out, and I mean, pretty much the moment Tony Pollard had the availability to be signed in free agency, he was swept off the market. But Tyjae Spears, at the age of 2022, right now being drafted on average is the RB 28. There were times in the offense or in these offseason where we saw him being drafted as high as like RB 12, coming off an absolutely fantastic rookie season, 4.5 yards per carry. What's really impressive is his advanced metrics, 26% missed forced tackle rate, 3.1 yards after contact per attempt. He was the picture of efficiency, averaged 1.01 fantasy points per touch last year. That ranked fourth among all running backs to play at least 50% of their team snaps. The thing about Tyjae Spears is, depending on their usage, which I don't necessarily think we have a full grasp of how they're going to mix him and Tony Pollard into this offense, with the way that both of these backs kind of play and efficiency being a calling card of theirs, is there a world where we might not see Tyjae Spears be productive, even if he doesn't have 250 plus touches? Like, maybe he's just going to be efficient. And that's what we saw as a rookie, right? Like, I'm
I'm out.
buying the dip.
I'm out.
You're out.
For a couple of reasons. Number one, I just think Tony Pollard's the better player. And I think if you look at some of the advanced numbers, you saw that in the second half of the season last year, Tony Pollard was a significantly better running back. Now that he was healthy, he's a full year removed from the broken ankle that he had in the 49er playoff game. We saw him start to get some of that juice back. And I think if you're the Titans, if you really believe in Tyjae Spears, that he can be a workhorse guy, you don't go out and you give Tony Pollard the contract that he got. I mean, you just don't. Maybe you draft a guy in the third or fourth round, or maybe you sign a Devin Singletary or that type of runner. But you don't go get Tony Pollard, who is, widely considered one of the top 3 or 4 running backs on the open market. I just don't see how he's going to get consistent enough touches. I don't know that he's going to get a lot of work in the passing game because I think Tony Pollard is a very good receiver who's really improved as a pass blocker. I think he's just going to be a change of pace back, and you're banking on an injury for him to have value. I'm out at RB 28, even after the ADP has dropped by almost 3 rounds over the last 2 months.
See, I'm looking at Tyjae Spears, and I'm looking at the skill set of Tony Pollard. They're different running backs, but again, I think both of these backs are these type of explosive and overly efficient running backs that, like, yeah, they might maybe Tony Pollard gets more touches, but like maybe there's closer to 50-50 usage than we expect. And I'm going to be honest, I just don't think Tyjae Spears is a guy that needs 250 plus touches in a season based
I
on
agree.
his level of efficiency. 75th percentile or higher in PFF rushing grade, missed forced tackles per attempt, yards after contact per attempt, zone rushing grade, receiving grade, missed forced tackles per reception, yards per route run, and breakaway run rate. You look at Tyjae Spears and his performance in comparison to some of the best running backs in the league last year, and he performed and very well compared against some of these top tier talents. I'm just saying, I don't think Tyjae Spears really did anything to necessarily lose the job. We were all shocked when, they had this kind of breakout rookie season from Tyjae Spears and opted to pay Tony Pollard. But I'm just saying, even the conjecture, like the coach speak that we're seeing out of Titans camp, they say we're excited to use both these running backs and we're excited to mix in both of these running backs. I would not be surprised if the usage is closer to 50-50. And again, maybe that puts both of these running backs in a prime position. Tyjae Spears is only 22 years old.
I'm buying Tony Pollard. I just think he's a better fit in a wide zone offense, which is what Tennessee's going to run with Brian and Bill Callahan. Bill Callahan, widely known for his ability to run the wide zone. I think Tyjae's
to run the wide zone.
I think Tyjae Spears is going to average like 12 to 13 touches a game, which puts him right in that 200 to 225 touch range, which I think makes sense. Remember, this is somebody who had a lot of concerns about his knee coming out of school. I think the Titans want to try to keep him fresh, maybe for a postseason run. So I think giving him, or trying to limit his usage is probably going to be the way they go. I just think Tony Pollard is going to be the guy. Every week we can count on him getting 17 to 18 touches. And I think this Titans offense is going to be one of the most improved in the NFL. I just trust that Pollard is going to be the one on the field a majority of the time, not Spears.
Just to be clear, so the same way in segment 1, you were buying both Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. I'm buying both Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard. I just think that there's going to be probably a lot more opportunities for fantasy points to be scored than most people would expect, just given the overall trajectory of the offense. I think the Titans could surprise a lot of folks this year. And looking at the play styles of both Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard, if you gave them both 225 touches apiece this year, I think both could end up being top 20 running backs come end of season.
Yes. I just think there's like a 0% chance that Tyjae Spears has 300 touches this year outside of let me
225 touches.
I know. I'm saying I think there's a 0% chance that Tyjae Spears has a 300 touch season. But I think if Tony Pollard stays relatively healthy, plays 16, 17 games, I think he gets there. And that's why I'd rather just have Tony Pollard. I think his role in the offense is going to be very stable week to week. And it wouldn't shock me if the Titans leaned on him more than anybody anticipates. I'm going to go on record now. I think Tony Pollard is going to average about 19 to 20 touches a game. So that makes him easily over 300, closer to the 330 mark. Ooh. I think that's where Tony Pollard is going to be at this year.
All right.
I'm buying Pollard. Can you tell?
I think so.
All right. Let's talk about a pre-draft favorite of ours for the 2023 NFL draft, Marvin Mims, and why his dynasty value has just absolutely plummeted. We will get to that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Everydayers, on Tuesday's show, we're going to take a look at 3 players, 3 old men who are being a little bit knocked too far down because of their age. So make sure you tune in for that show. It's going to be a lot of fun. Spoiler, there's a couple of receivers that are being drafted like in the 30s, in the 40s that I think are going to produce high-end wide receiver 2 numbers next year. So make sure you tune in for that. But, Kate, let's finish up here with Marvin Mims, who has dropped about 30 spots in ADP over the last month on Dynasty League football. Why do you expect that going into year 2 with Jerry Jeudy gone? Why do you think that Marvin Mims is having such a big decrease in value?
I think this one's kind of interesting. I think a lot of this decrease in value for Marvin Mims heading into year 2 comes from two things, right? We saw a lot of flashes from Marvin Mims as a rookie, and we saw plenty of flashes. We saw some very high upside usage in terms of like targets downfield, these high value targets that can be very conducive to upside. But again, for as many flashes we saw a lot of inconsistencies. And then comes Troy Franklin into this offense that I think easily projects as the number one target in this offense coming out of the gate. And again, like I
Over
just
Cortland Sutton?
no, we're going to talk about Troy Franklin. No, I don't. Cortland Sutton. I love Cortland Sutton. I think he is going to be a threat. I think he is going to be a body you need to account for. But more of the contested catch specialist. Troy Franklin is a guy that comes in year 1, has some ideal height, not necessarily ideal strength. He's got a smaller build, but between his ability as a tall person to run very quickly, I mean the way that he moves is very surprising for a guy of his stature, to be able to separate as well as he does just based on speed. He runs like a gazelle, but like much quicker. 88th percentile in PFF receiving grade last year, 87th percentile in open target rate, 92nd percentile in yards per route run, 70th percentile in yards after the catch per reception. Troy Franklin is a very good receiver. My gripe with him coming out of this draft was the fact that, like, yes, coming out of Oregon, his usage was kind of one dimensional. It was kind of like he won by, being kind of taller and faster than everybody else and being able to generate separation that way, as opposed to being a nuanced route runner. He's got a lot of room for development there, but then you look at the fact that his college quarterback is going to be the one throwing him the ball. They've got that built-in connection. I think people are catching on to the fact that, like, yeah, coming in day 1 and having this built-in rapport between Bo Nix and Troy Franklin, that's probably going to be a problem for others trying to earn targets in the offense.
How fast do you think gazelles can run, by the way? I just Googled it.
I genuinely don't know.
They can run up to 68 miles per hour. Now, they can sustain speeds about 50 miles per hour. But
Okay.
68. I mean, Troy Franklin's pretty fast. I would like to see a gazelle and Troy Franklin race, but it's just interesting. All right.
What does a gazelle run in terms of 40-yard dash?
That's a good point. We'll have to find out what their stop.
And gazelles are probably shorter than Troy Franklin. So come on.
Back to Marvin Mims. I was listening to a podcast with Cecil Lammy on footballguys.com. They do a fantastic show. Go check it out. He was talking about Marvin Mims. He's been at practice. Cecil has been at practice the last couple of weeks, and there's still some concerns about his route running, and maybe Sean Payton isn't as thrilled with Marvin Mims as he is some of the other receivers. I think Cortland Sutton, who is participating in mandatory minicamp, he's obviously going to be one of the starters. We think Troy Franklin will play a part of this receiving core this year. I'm not quite sure what it's going to be, but he'll definitely be involved. They brought back Tim Patrick. I am a little bit concerned about Marvin Mims, and I loved him pre-draft. I was a huge fan of Marvin Mims. We saw him make plays as a kick and punt returner early on, and then just kind of got phased out of the offense. And I don't know what's going on there, but it doesn't sound like the vibes are great. I have Marvin Mims in a lot of my dynasty leagues right now. I certainly can't advocate to go out and buy more shares of Marvin Mims until we get some better news, because it doesn't seem like things are going great in Denver right now. And you're going to have a rookie quarterback. Will he be able to support multiple receivers in this offense? I have my concerns, at least early on. So I think Marvin Mims is a hold right now if you have him, and he's far from a buy.
Yeah, and to be clear, again, this is a show that was very, very high on Marvin Mims.
Yes.
Loved the athlete, loved pretty much everything about Marvin Mims. And then you had the fact that like Sean Payton's first draft pick with the Denver Broncos was trading up to acquire Marvin Mims. I thought that things were kind of trending in this direction, but Sean Payton, not the most forgiving of souls. So like if he's not clawing his
No.
way out of any perceived doghouse right now, I just think it's going to be an uphill battle in general for the offense. And I mean, the point about Bo Nix, how many wide receivers can he realistically support?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Worried.
TBD.
I'm worried about Marvin Mims, and maybe things will change once we get to training camp. Maybe that's where we'll see some improved route running. But I do think he's probably destined to be a slot receiver.
To be
Which I
fair,
think
probably a deep slot. Which,
a downfield slot receiver. But I'm concerned. I think this is certainly a. Let's wait until we get to training camp. We wait until we get to the preseason before we get some news. But Kate, I won't be surprised if Marvin Mims continues to see a pretty massive fall in dynasty leagues right now. He's already down to wide receiver 66, and I won't be surprised to see that continue to fall over the next month or so.
bummed to see it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be rooting for the Marvin Mims bounce back campaign. But again, just looking at the large sum of the parts we're looking at right now,
It's not
it
great.
feels like an uphill battle.
Yeah. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Again, every day. Check out tomorrow's show when we take a look at 3 players who dynasty managers might be downgrading a little bit too much because of their age. So tune in for that. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. Make sure you also check out our work at Behind the Steel Curtain and Pro Football Focus. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.